In this presentation, I will be going over the processes that occur during the uterine cycle. The menstrual cycle consists of two cycles, the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle. The ovarian cycle focuses on ovarian follicle development, growth, and ovulation, which occurs in the ovaries, whereas the uterine cycle focuses on the thickening and shedding of the endometrium in response to the ovarian cycle, which occurs in the uterus. Although we will be talking about the ovarian cycle, our main focus will be on the uterine cycle. There are three phases to the uterine cycle: the menstrual phase, which lasts from days 1 through 5, the proliferative phase, which lasts from days 6 through 14, and the secretory phase, which lasts from days 15 through 28. At the top of the figure, you can see the follicular phase and the luteal phase, which are part of the ovarian cycle, which we won't be going into too much detail in this presentation, so I shall hide this. Since we are focusing on the uterine cycle, we will be looking at this timeline in terms of the three phases mentioned on the previous slide, which was the menstrual phase, the proliferative phase, and the secretory phase. During the menstrual phase, also known as menses or menstruation, the old endometrial lining from the previous cycle sheds and is exited through the vagina. This process is commonly known as the menstrual period. The shedding of the old endometrial lining is due to low estrogen and progesterone levels, as you can see in the graph. During the proliferative phase, estrogen levels begin to rise, causing the endometrial lining to thicken, hence the term proliferative, meaning rapid increase of something, which in this case is the endometrial lining. The estrogen levels rise due to its secretion from the developing follicle in the ovaries, which are developing due to the secretion of follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH, and luteinizing hormone, LH, from the anterior pituitary gland in the brain. The rising estrogen levels also leads to a proliferation of stroma and glands and the elongation of the spiral arteries to supply blood to the endometrium. Additionally, the increasing estrogen levels causes the cervical mucus to change in consistency, making it more hospitable to potential incoming sperm. If you notice in the graph above, outlined in red, FSH and LH levels begin to decline slightly just before the large spike around day 12. This is due to the increasing estrogen levels negatively feeding back on the pituitary to inhibit the release of additional FSH and LH. Around day 12, the increasing estrogen levels switch roles and exerts a positive feedback on the pituitary, stimulating it to release some FSH and a lot of LH, as you can see outlined in green. This spike in LH is what causes the ovum to rupture from the ovary, which is termed as ovulation. The LH then causes the corpus luteum to form from the remaining follicles. This spike in LH is what causes the ovum to rupture from the ovary, which is termed as ovulation. The LH then causes the corpus luteum to form from the remaining follicle cells. During the secretory phase, the uterine lining produces hormones that will either aid in an early pregnancy or will prepare the uterine lining to break down and shed if pregnancy doesn't occur. In the early secretory phase, progesterone levels begin to rise, as you can see outlined in red, causing more glycogen and mucus to be secreted, making the environment more hospitable for the sperm. The progesterone levels rise due to its secretion from the developing corpus luteum in the ovaries. It is also important to note that the corpus luteum also releases estrogen, but in smaller amounts than progesterone. The increasing levels of progesterone acts as a negative feedback, telling the anterior pituitary gland in the brain to inhibit the release of FSH and LH, causing estrogen levels to decline, which you can see outlined in red in the graph. However, because the corpus luteum is still releasing estrogen and progesterone, their levels continue to rise afterwards, as seen in the green box. During the mid-secretory phase, the endometrium becomes receptive to the implantation of a fertilized embryo. During the late secretory phase, in the absence of pregnancy, and with an accompanying drop in both estrogen and progesterone, outlined in yellow, the spiral arteries vasoconstrict, leading to shrinkage of the endometrium. The drop in estrogen and progesterone levels also causes the cervical mucus to thicken, making it less hospitable for the sperm. If you notice above, outlined in orange, the basal body temperature during the secretory phase is slightly higher than in the menstrual and proliferative phases. This occurs due to the presence of progesterone. The increase in body temperature causes the cervical mucus to dry up and the cervix to close and tighten to prevent fertilization. Now the uterus is ready to shed the uterine lining and begin the menstrual cycle all over again. I hope this presentation was clear and provided some insight to the uterine cycle and the hormones associated with it. Thank you for watching.